This workshop is all about overcoming your self-doubt. Um, if you are here, I'm assuming you might have just a shred of self-doubt about the things you want to try and achieve in your life. Some of you may be like, no, I got this. I'm just here to look down on you. That's fine. If you need that as well, if that's what makes you feel good, great. Um, and I want to talk about this because this is something I've struggled with my entire career, even now. Whenever I'm trying something new or trying to achieve a new goal or dream, um, I am someone who has a brain that tells me that I can't do it and that I'm not good enough. And it's just, it's an anxiety thing that I have that has plagued me my whole life. Um, and I've learned some tips and tricks to help overcome that doubt so that you can actually achieve those things that you want to achieve. So hopefully this will give you some tips and we can talk and share a little bit, and then you can ask me questions and also just career questions if you have as well. So first off, Emma, I forgot, how long is this supposed to be?
We have flexibility. Most of them have gone for like about an hour with some time for
Great.
questions, but it's up to you. The next workshop goes
Okay.
in for a couple
I'll
hours.
probably go for about 4 hours. So I hope you guys
Oh,
don't
okay.
have any plans. I do have a lot of things I need to get off my chest. No, just kidding. That sounds great. That's what I had planned for. And by plan, I mean not planned at all. No, I am prepared for this. One thing that hasn't changed since I was your age at William and Mary is that I'm a procrastinator. And some of that is because of what I just talked about, where I kind of like have a voice in my head that goes, oh, that's, you're not going to do good. You might as well just not even work on it, those kinds of things. But then I overcome it and I get through it. So I have a little PowerPoint thing I'm going to share. I'm fully recognizing and acknowledging that I'm an old woman. Here we go. I'm going to share the screen. You guys are like, please, I've been Zooming school for a whole year. Get your shit together. Okay, here we go. Share screen. Okay. Um, I made sure to minimize all the inappropriate stuff on my screen. Here we go. Oh, guys, look at it. Okay, can you see this? Is it like covered up? Okay, I don't know if, okay, whatever. Just deal with it. It is what it is. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to interrupt me. Okay, so here's me being awesome. All right, I'm doing stand up on TV. I won Emmy Awards. I hosted a TV show with Nikki Glazer on MTV. I went, walked the red carpet, met celebrities, had makeup artists touching my face, all that awesome shit. Okay. But behind every single one of those was a moment where I thought I couldn't do it. And it started, uh, I'm like, how do I forward? How do I, what's good? There we go. It started in DuPont First East. Okay. This is me. All right. This is the idiot that thought she could do all that. And then many times thought she couldn't. And as you can see, I had a lot of talent right out the gate. You put a t-shirt on your head, boom, instant comedy. That's what we do. Um, but this is me at William and Mary in 1996. Um, and I had dreams then, but they were vague. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my life. And a lot of that, I knew in my heart I wanted to be an entertainer. I wanted to write. I wanted to be in the TV and film business. But I had a hard time admitting it because I felt like that was something maybe out of reach for me, and that maybe I didn't deserve to be in that world. And um, so I wanted to just start off with a little tip from the very beginning is you got to envision that shit. And what we're going to do right now, I want everybody to, if you have with you a piece of paper, a note on your phone, however you can type something or write something down, I want you to write down that big dream in your head. It can be vague, it can be very specific, but that is almost, maybe for some of you, would be a dream that is almost embarrassing, where you're like blushing, like, oh my God, like, I think I could do that. Ooh, get real, girl. No, like that kind of dream that you're almost embarrassed to tell. Write it down. It could be like, I want to be in a movie one day. I want to write a movie. I want to direct a movie. I want to win an Emmy award. I want to win an Oscar. I want to, I don't know, live in the Hollywood Hills with a pool. Like whatever it is that it represents to you, I've made it. Okay. I've achieved the thing I want to achieve. So I'll give you a second to do that. Really think about it. If you're not sure, at your age, I wasn't even sure. I probably would have written down like, I just want to entertain. Like I wouldn't even know what to put. I want to be loved. Like it could be even basic like that. Like I just want to feel love on my skin. You know, it could be anything that feels that way for you. Okay. So you've written that down. And I think the next part of this step, of this process, because writing it down at, especially early on when you're starting out in your career or on a specific project, it basically, what we call in TV, the TV shows that I work on, a lot of times if we're doing a segment or a whole episode, because I work a lot in comedy variety type shows, where it's not necessarily the same as a scripted show, but where we go, what is the central question of this episode? What is your central question? You know, if you know what your central question is, if you know what your dream or your goal is, you have that to always look back on. I even recommend having it written on a piece of paper that you frame and put in a little frame and have it on your desk. And it's there to remind you, everything should be, every work that you do should be leading to that. Just like in an episode of TV that I work on, what is the central question? Is the central question that the host is going to find the best dessert in LA, which is a TV show I just worked on. A famous comedian is going around and discovering different foods in LA. It's like, is that the question? Okay, remember that. Everything you do in this outline for this episode has to help answer that question. So this is similar, where you have a dream that you're trying to do, so that when you get up in the morning and you have a free day of time, you think to yourself, what am I going to do today? Can I help for just even 20 minutes? Can I put myself closer to reaching that goal? So that helps me just out the gate. That's just a big picture type thing. Now there's another piece of this, which is, if you dream something, say something. Now I'm not going to make anybody say this out loud. Maybe at the end, when we're feeling a little more comfortable and less terrified of me, we can maybe anyone who wants to share their dream out loud. I think it's incredibly important. It's critical. It's one thing to write down on a piece of paper just for you, like, I want to do this one day. I think that it's not complete until you tell at least one other person about that dream. And the reason why you want to tell at least one other person about that dream and that goal is because now you put it out into the world, you've made it real, and you have somebody who can ask you about it. And maybe, I don't want to say accountability partner, because that's not sometimes what you need. Just somebody who can hear you and see that you have said that and might follow up with you on it and might go, hey, what's going on with that screenplay that you wanted to write? Are you still working on it? And that kind of helps draw you out of yourself and have to answer to someone. And also, when you finally do reach the goal, you have somebody who heard you say it out loud way back when, and you have somebody to celebrate it with. And that is really, really cool. Like when you can go get a drink with somebody and you can be like, remember remember when I told you I was going to do that thing and it happened? I got chills just thinking about those moments. Those moments are beyond. So I think that's a really good, important part of this step, is that you need to not only write it down, but then you need to say it out loud to somebody else that you trust and care about. And maybe we'll share some of them at the end of this, because even the better step is just telling a random bunch of strangers, to be honest with you. Okay. Here's me in a sorority court, okay, with the best haircut ever had. I mean, look at the style, all right? I was in Kappa Alpha Theta. I don't even know if that's still a sorority on campus. They hated me. I was the bad news bears of that sorority. But anyway, hopefully nobody in that sorority is watching this and getting mad at me for kind of trashing it. But anyway, I respect anybody who joins a sorority. I was in one. We had fun, but I was just a bad member. Okay, but here's me wearing my Theta shirt once. And look at the sparkle, okay? Just look at the sparkle in my eye. I had all my dreams ahead of me. One of the biggest steps that I took after I graduated was what I just talked about, was telling other people, finally, out loud, having the bravery to go, I want to be a comedian. I didn't even really know what that meant, because back then we didn't have so much access to podcasts and stuff online. I had only seen stand-up comedy on TV. I had no concept of how I was going to even do something like that. In college, I was in the sketch comedy group, 7th grade sketch comedy. I was one of the first members of that group. I think it still exists. But that was my first taste of what it felt like to be funny in front of a crowd. And I wanted to follow that feeling. I really loved it. But I wasn't sure how to do it. I was terrified. I had never seen stand-up comedy in person, and much less sketch comedy or improv or anything. I really had not seen much of it or been exposed to much of it. A friend of mine encouraged me, and this is another part of saying these things out loud to people, is because then they might take you along for their ride. You might work together to reach your goals. So a friend of mine from 7th grade sketch comedy said, I'm going to move to New York. I have a hookup. I'm going to walk dogs for a member of Saturday Night Live, a cast member from Saturday Night Live. And I thought, oh my God, we've got an in. We got a connection. Let's go. So I go to New York. I have no idea how I'm going to start, what I'm going to do. We go. I think 6 months tops, I'm going to be on SNL. How hard can it be? I get there, it's a disaster. It was scary. But I figured it out bit by bit. And it only took me a full year. And I finally got the bravery up to do stand-up. Now, this is me being really funny, okay? This is the second time I ever did stand-up at Stand Up New York. And it took me a long time, because I had this negative voice in my head saying, you're not good enough, you're not funny, you can't, I had come from working with a group of people at William & Mary in a very safe environment, relatively speaking, where we wrote sketches together, we performed together, and I suddenly found myself without anyone to write with, especially in terms of getting up on stage by myself. And I had this voice in my head saying, you'll never make it. I was working in a day job at a law firm, calculating damages for securities fraud cases. I have no idea how I got that job, and I don't know why they let me do it. It was so terrifying. I would look up in the, because back then, sorry to be all back then we had to walk uphill both ways in the snow. But back then we didn't have the social media aspect of it, and the internet was still pretty newish, and how it was being used was a little different. But I would actually look at a physical magazine called Time Out New York, and it would list, all the restaurants, music venues, concert show, theater, whatever. And they had a section on live events, and they had comedy. And I would look in Time Out New York, and I would look at the shows that were going on that week. And then I would circle which ones I wanted to go to, to just check it out and see, could I potentially be on this show one day or an open mic or whatever. And I would go up to the door of the venue or the bar where it was. Most of them were very sketchy and smelled bad. And I would go up to the door of it and then turn around and walk away because I was so afraid to even go inside just as an audience member. I was afraid to go in and because I thought that they would know that I wanted to be a comedian and like make fun of me. Like, I don't know what was going on in my brain, but I was just like, it was just all so terrifying to me. And again, this negative voice going, who do you think you are? You don't know what the hell you're doing. You don't have what it takes. And I just, that voice would just nip at my heels until finally one day I just couldn't take it anymore. And I hated my day job. And I had this keyboard that my friend, my family had given to me. And I just came up with a song idea about the cubicle that I worked in. And it was a song called QB. And it was like pretty basic office humor. But it was about my life and it was about my frustrations and it was what was right in front of me. And I just wrote this song and I knew it was hilarious and I put it on a CD because I'm not very good at playing piano and singing at the same time. So I like put it on a CD, which I don't know if you guys know what that is, but it's like I can't even begin to explain to you what it is, but it's something that music is on, okay? And then it plays and then people hear it, okay? It's vintage, all right? Um, so I I came up with this song. I took it to a comedy club that had like an open mic and I performed it and it went great. And it was just this a huge moment where I realized I can do this. But where it came from was one, just that it was what and this was a moment where it was like, this is what I meant to do because it was almost like it forced itself out of me. It was all the negative voice in my head could not keep me from being me. Okay. I still had to perform. I had to share and make people laugh and be creative and write something. It still came out of me, even though this voice was trying to keep me down and all the fear and everything. I finally, something came, inspiration hit. And when it hit, I was ready to go. And then it just sort of set me off on this path. I bombed a lot after this, and there was a lot of pain and terror and rejection and failure. But this started me out in New York. Now, here's something I call proper conditions for germination. I'm really into gardening now. As I've mentioned, I'm an old woman, an old pioneer lady, especially after the pandemic. And I think a lot about the metaphors that gardening can provide, which is one, when you're trying to grow a vegetable or a plant, you have a seed and you put it in the ground and then it sprouts. But it's not that simple. It has to be a certain temperature. There has to be the proper amount of moisture. Some seeds, they have to go in at a certain depth, 1 inch, half inch, quarter inch, some just scattered on top. Sometimes sunlight is required to help it germinate, which means the seed should be closer to the surface so the sun can touch it. There's all kinds of stuff, okay? And here's what I say about that 1 year where I was in New York, where I was afraid to try and afraid to get my comedy life going. I was still creating the conditions necessary for my little seed to sprout. Even though I was afraid to actually try and I didn't know what I was going to say or do without my sketch comedy group around me, what was I going to write? I didn't know how to write. What was I going to do? I don't even know what's funny, all that stuff. I still was preparing for this moment. I knew it was coming. I just didn't know how or when. And so what I did is I took classes. I started making friends with other comedians. I read Time Out New York and looked at the magazine and figured out which shows to go to. I did have the bravery eventually to go see shows. I started watching comedy. I started carrying a notebook with me on the subway to work every day, and I just started writing down anything that came to mind. And I have those notebooks still, and I look back at it, and most of it is absolute trash. But some of those ideas came through and actually sprouted into something. And so that's why I say give yourself the proper conditions for germination. So you're going to be facing a lot of self-doubt, a lot of unknowns, but you do know some things. And especially now with so much access to so much information and guidebooks and master classes and workshops and da 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 da, take what you can from those, make a list of all the things you think might help you get there. And so for instance, if your goal was to write a screenplay, okay, maybe you need a screenwriting program, which if you can't afford, there are free ones. There's a free screenwriting program called Writer's Duet, which is really, really, to me, the same as Final Draft. I used it. I have both, and I use Writer's Duet. Um, it might be Writer Duet, not Writer's Duet, but if you Google it, it'll come up. But get those programs, tinker around in them. You may not know what you're going to write. Learn how to use it. Learn the shortcuts. These are all things that are going to give you the conditions necessary to get your seed sprouted. Okay, I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, again, please, if something is really not making sense, you can interrupt me, although we will do questions here soon. All right, make it real. Here's another really important piece of advice that I still use to this day. Right now, I'm working on a new podcast that I'm going to be launching hopefully the next week or two. And the pandemic has made things pretty mentally difficult for a lot of us. And I've been overcoming that kind of negative thinking and self-doubt in combination with it. And everybody has a podcast now. All my comedian friends are launching new podcasts. Well, we can't do stand-up. So comedians are like, I got a podcast, and that voice trickles in and starts going, nobody cares about your podcast. Everybody has one. What do you have to say that's different than anybody? It's like, you know what? No, I'm still going to do it. But I procrastinate, I self-doubt. One of the things that helps me overcome that is by making it real. I start teasing it out on my social media. I start, hey, I've got a new podcast coming. Well, once you set it to your fans, you kind of have to follow through. Make it real. Do something that makes it real. Sign up for the open mic. Invite a friend to come see you at the poetry reading. Whatever it is, make it real. Make it so that now you have an obligation to get it done. That could be something official, like things I've talked about, like telling people on social media that you're going to do something. Well, now you kind of feel like you have to. Although you can always back out. Trust me. There's, all of these pieces of advice, by the way, you can ignore them at whatever point you need to protect yourself. You might need a break from pushing yourself so hard at times, which I'll get to soon. So do something to make it real. That has served me time and time again. When I wrote my book, which was probably the most difficult creative challenge I've done in my entire life, other than maybe starting comedy, which I've talked about. Writing my book was so incredibly difficult because it was a lot of emotional stuff that I was getting into. I'd never written a book. It seemed so big. It was real. I got a book deal. I was very fortunate to get a book deal prior to writing it. Like I just wrote like a 30-page proposal, and given my career and the foundation I built, this publisher, Simon & Schuster, was willing to pay me a lot of money to me. I mean, some people get way more money than I got, but to me, it was like, wow, this is a lot. Now, once you spread it out over 3 years, it was probably less than minimum wage. But to me at the time, I was like, this is so much money. But this is real. Oh my God, I have to do this now. And so things like that, they are great motivators, but they can also be terrifying. But sometimes the terrifying is the space in which you need to be to get this done. Be brave about it. All right, so here's a point in my life where I made something real. And I say make it real, you can also fake it real, all right? This is a headshot that I had made, my very first headshot. Look at this. Look at the girl next door. I mean, what the heck? This is a ridiculous picture. And I signed it. It's the only sign. I signed it and gave it to my mom. And of course she framed it and put it up. But I was just starting out when I got this picture done. And I didn't need a headshot. I didn't have an agent, a manager. I wasn't auditioning for anything. I just wanted a headshot because it made me feel like I was official. And I think doing some of those things maybe before, things that people go, you're not ready for a headshot. You're not ready for this thing you're doing. Who cares? Do it anyway. Spend a little money if you have it, or get it done for free. Do it yourself, whatever, to kind of fake it. Like, I'm trying to think of examples other than a headshot, but just something that make a business card. Back in when you moved to, people used to get business cards. I don't know if y'all do that anymore, but like um, something that kind of makes you maybe a little more official than you are can actually really boost your confidence. Go, no, I am a comedian. I am a writer. I am this. Calling yourself the thing that you want to be is very helpful, I think. You decide what you are, like, because there's a difference between someone who's making money as a TV writer or as a director and someone who just does it because they love it. Yes, there is that difference, but you have to be the thing in order to get paid for it. That's just how it works. You don't become a paid professional comedian or director and writer without having done it a lot yourself, without getting paid first. Unfortunately, that is part of the way things work right now. I wish we got paid for every single little bit of work we did, but sometimes now you have to do a lot of stuff up front. So I don't think there's any harm in saying, I am a comedian, I am a writer, I am I'm a critic, I'm an editor, whatever it is you're trying to do. It's okay to just say that that's what you are. Now, maybe there's situations where you wouldn't be so boastful or whatever, or like, lie about what your job is or something like that. But to yourself and maybe to your friends and family, it's okay to just be like, this is who I am. Let's get this off this picture of me. Okay. To the nuts and bolts of, let's say that you've decided, I want to write a short film. I want to write a book. I want to direct something, whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. Putting a routine into your, like, let's say you're like, by the end of a deadline is good. I probably should have put a separate slide for that, but that's part of making it real. Give yourself a deadline. I'm going to submit a short film to this festival, or I'm going to, by the end of the month, I'm going to post this online, something I've created. In order to get there, you have to put in a routine, because the good stuff that you put out in the world is not usually stuff you can do off the fly. A tweet is not, tweets can go viral, but a tweet, or I guess y'all don't really do Twitter, a TikTok, though TikToks can take a lot of work, as we know. I've tried it and it's a disaster for me, but you guys probably have it all figured out. But anything you're going to put out in the world that's worth that's really a creative expression of who you are, is going to take some time. So you need to put in a routine. One thing I worked on when I was doing my book, which was a very difficult process, I had a lot of really negative thinking in my head, was having a routine. And I was working on my own schedule with it and had like really far off deadlines, but it was such a big project. I was having trouble with my timing and putting in no understanding how much I needed to work on it any given day. So I put in a routine, which is I get up every morning and I would go straight to the coffee shop. This was pre-pandemic times. And I would go straight to the coffee shop and I would get at least 20 minutes of work done. And then when I was done with that 20 minutes, I could have an iced tea and some eggs or whatever I bought, a bagel or whatever it is. Like, it was like a little reward for myself. I wouldn't starve myself. I wouldn't go for too long before eating, but just giving myself that I'm here to work and I get 20 minutes of work done, then I can get on with breakfast and all that stuff. Actually became incredibly useful. Some days I could only get that 20 minutes of work done, but at least I had gotten something done and I didn't come to the end of the day beating myself up going, I didn't get anything done today. Getting that 20 minutes of work done, sometimes that would unleash me and I would work for 12 hours that day and get so much done. It just depended on the day, but at least every day I was getting a little bit done and just chipping away. So having a routine, whatever that is, that really works for you. If you have a place in the library, or when you end up graduating and going off somewhere, you have a place in your own dwelling or a coffee shop or whatever it is. it is actually the stereotype of like screenwriters in the coffee shop. It's true. You go at any coffee shop in LA you go to, it's literally 20 of me just being like, I'm writing a movie, like, and that's fine. It actually feels really good to be around other people who are dreaming and trying just like you. And sometimes you feel a little competitive in your heart and you're just like, I'm gonna write more today. And that can kind of like spur you on as well. But that can be dangerous. Oh, wait, sharing is caring. Now, what did I mean by this? Oh, okay, sharing is caring really quick. I want to get on to questions and stuff here, so I'm going to fly through this stuff. Sharing is caring is all about, and this is a question I get a lot about, how do I start? How do I begin? It feels like, you've written down that goal on that piece of paper, and trust me, there's most likely for all of you, there will be many years between you and that goal, depending on what you wrote down. It takes a long time to make it. And so when people say, how do I begin? I always say, it's really important, no matter what it is you're trying to do in your career in the entertainment or in the entertainment business, is to share your work with people early on. Don't sit on it and hide it away from the world. You need feedback immediately. You need to learn what works, what doesn't. And it can be in a safe way. You can share it with friends and family if you feel safe at first. Just not even publicly. Just, with my book, it was so vulnerable what I wrote. It was a lot of stuff in this book I'd never shared with the world before. I've been on a million podcasts. I've been out there doing my stand-up, talking about my life, but this was stuff that was really precious to me and scary to share. So in the beginning, I shared the first draft with a very close friend of mine, one of my original hallmates and roommates from William and Mary, who I stayed friends with all these years. And I let her read the book first. And I told her, I said, I need gentle feedback. And being clear about what you need from people is helpful too. Like right now, I'm really vulnerable with this and I will be crushed if someone says they don't like it. Down the line, I'll be able to handle more harsh criticism. And I did. I got really harsh criticism from my editor. And then it goes out in the world and, some people don't like the book or whatever. And as a stand-up, I'm used to people hating my guts. Like I'm used to it. You go up on stage in any given night and it might be every person in there, the look on their faces, they want to literally murder you. So I'm used to that stuff. But this was the book was like when I was first starting out, it was just very raw and scary. And so having people look at your work early on is very important. And then as soon as you're ready, sharing it with a wider audience is critical because you're going to get a sense of what's working and what doesn't. And you can't grow unless you can get that kind of feedback. So sharing is caring. Get your work out there, whatever it is, in the smallest little way. Just make something really small and send it out into the world. Don't hide it away. You can't work in a vacuum, usually. Okay. The bad voice. This is the big bad voice, the one I've been talking about. And I think people deal with a different type of bad voice telling them different things, but many people in the creative world deal with some sort of bad voice in their head going, you're not good enough, this sucks, you're boring, blah, 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 you basic bitch, whatever it is that it says about you. I learned a very handy tool, which was and this is something my therapist taught me, which if you're fortunate enough to have health, which you hopefully will until you're 25, is to have, if you struggle with a lot of anxiety or mental health issues, seeking support for that, getting a therapist, going even online communities to find support is extremely important. But one thing my therapist taught me is when my bad voice is coming in, I mean, when I was working on my book, God, it was crushing me. It was hard to type a one word sometimes because this voice was saying, nobody wants to hear this. You're so boring. You're so, whatever. And she taught me a way to kind of deal with it, which is to just sit up and be like, you know what? And to talk back to the voice. You can talk back to the voice. I mean, you can even talk back to the voice in public, although that might be embarrassing. But I talk back to the voice and I say, you know what? You might be right. I actually give the voice a little bit of a moment. I go, you might be right. I might be boring. I might be terrible. People might hate this book because I don't know the reaction. I can't control how other people are going to feel about my work. And that is one of the huge risks of being a creative person that you put your work out in the world. You can't control the reaction. So I go to the voice, I say, you know what? You might be right, but I'm gonna do it anyway. And that's what I say to the voice. And then the voice goes away. I say, I'm gonna do it anyway. And that is, for me, has been one of the most helpful, very simple, almost childlike pieces of advice I've ever gotten. But it, instead of getting into a fight with the voice where I'm like, no, I'm not boring, and here's what I'm gonna do, and people are gonna love the book, and I don't get into an argument. I just go, you know what, you might be right, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Now run along. And that's how I handle it. So that finding those tips and tools, extremely, extremely helpful. Some sort of stopgap motion that you put into place, almost like a protocol that you have for when the voice comes, find that for you. Okay. Just say no to, okay, so this is what I'm saying. This is what I was going to get into about being competitive. Compare and despair is when you're comparing yourself to all the other people around you and you're going, they're doing it better. How did they get that? I'm funnier than that guy. How is he famous? Like those compare and despair will destroy you. But it's very natural to do it. And I think, being aware of what your peers are doing is extremely helpful, but you can't spend too much time in the compare and despair spot. Okay. So that just keep that at bay as best you can. You're on your own path. Some people look at as a pie, like let's say you're trying to be a TV writer and go, I want my piece of the pie. I think that's a very unhelpful way of looking at it. You can also look at it as, well, there's enough pie to go around for everybody, or I can even bake my own pie. I think it is extremely competitive. I don't want to be unrealistic about that. And, but I think when you're starting out, thinking of it that way can be a little bit destructive. So you need a little bit of competitiveness in you because it is so competitive, but you also can't let it overcome and overtake you and worrying about what other people are doing. Stick to your own path. Okay. Get a life, you losers. No, get a life means have a life. Have hobbies, do other things. As much as focus and work as it takes to make it in this business, you do need to have a well-rounded life or you'll go crazy. And also you'll have nothing to write about. I can't tell you how many times in comedy, I would go to a show and I could tell the comedians who did nothing else in their life other than go to shows, that their jokes were too self-referential, they were too inside, and they couldn't grow because they had never experienced anything. You hit a wall where you're like, you need to go out and experience the world if you're going to create things based on it. Having hobbies, having friends, going to movies, experiencing other things is so, so important for not only your mental health and overcoming your self-doubt. The inspiration you'll get from other places, just even gardening. I find so many metaphors for my own life in gardening that it helps me achieve my creative goals. So, all right, tiny rewards real quick. And I think we're almost to the end of this. I think giving yourself tiny rewards for accomplishing certain goals as you're going. So say, I want to come up with one character. I want to come up with the character. I'm going to write a character bio for this one character in my story or my screenplay or whatever. And I want to get it done today or whatever the short-term goal you have. Give yourself a reward, or even if it's just vague, like I want to work for 1 hour on this project today. And at the end of it, I get to have, now you got to be careful with that, because if your reward is like wine or like on really unhealthy habits, try to keep that at bay. But giving yourself little rewards, whatever it is, just to get through it is very helpful. I love going out to eat pre-pandemic times. And when I would work really hard on my book, I'd be like, if you work really hard on the book today, you can go out to a restaurant tonight and have a fun night. And so those were like little things that would help me kind of get through it. Finally, I would say be a failure. Do not be afraid to fail. Fail millions of times. It's never over. You can look at some, I think one, in our business, youth is very prized. And even when I got my talk show when I was around 34 years old. And at the time I felt so old. I was like, I got this so after the fact, and I finally got my talk show. I look back and I'm like, you were so young. Um, I think having a timeline based on age is a dangerous game to be in because you can find plenty of examples of people having their career hit much later than others. Earlier can actually be bad because you can have a really huge break when you're young and then it just sort of fizzles out and you're never going to feel like you reach that peak again. That can be kind of, I know people who have that, and that can be kind of a difficult situation to be in. So don't worry about age. Don't worry about failing. It's a long game. And if you don't fail, you will not figure out how to grow. I mean, my biggest failure and one of my most painful rejections in my entire career was at William and Mary before I even really knew what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted nothing more than to be on IT, the improv group. It was the only comedy outlet on campus at the time. And I wanted nothing more. I made it my life goal. Freshman year, I tried out. I didn't get in, but I got a call back, and they were like, "You got a call back? That's really rare for a freshman." And I just, whatever. We don't need to get into it. I'm not mad. You're mad. No, I got rejected from IT when I thought I had a real chance in getting in, and it almost broke me. But that failure led to me getting involved with seventh grade and finding this whole other group of people. And it just was, I would never have it any other way. It was one of the best things that ever happened to me. But at the time, it broke my heart. I was devastated. And since then, I've come to learn that failure is really painful in the moment, but you never know how it's all going to work out. So embrace it and learn from it the best you can. And so that's that. Hold on, let me stop sharing. Okay, so I kind of rushed through all that, and I hope that that was in any way remotely helpful to you. But now I'd like to open it up to questions. If anyone has any questions about, okay. Ooh, some people are putting their dreams into the chat. I like this. I want to write a novel that becomes a blockbuster movie. That's a great goal. That's smart. Because I will say this, writing a book is a piece of IP, intellectual property, that lives forever and can become a movie at any point, and then suddenly it has a whole new life. So people in this business, if you've written a book, it's sort of like a proven, like you've like proven a concept, you've shown that you can do a long project, you've shown that you have substantial work ethic and talent and whatever. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Get in there.
Yeah, feel free to put them into the chat or raise your hand, either way. Or just unmute.
Yeah.
I'll start off. How do you, especially when you were starting out, how do you deal with maybe the doubts of other people who are maybe in a completely different field and don't understand how a career like this might work, or just the pressure to have things figured out like right after graduation?
Mm-hmm. Are you talking about your parents? No. Just people in your life that don't really understand what it is you want to do, and they like don't know why you don't have it figured out. Yeah, I think self-doubt. This is one of the tough things, is that self-doubt can be planted in you from outside sources. It can be people in your life who don't understand what it is you're trying to do, and they have some sort of weird judgment on you. It could be trolls online that just like, it could be some fleeting thing you see that just makes you go, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. Oh, I'm not good enough. Whatever it is. I treat them, to me, as similar as the bad voice, which is like, I understand that I hear that you don't really understand what it is I'm doing, but I think you need to give me time to show you. And I would even have examples. So one of the things when you're pitching TV is they always want to know, they want an example of what it is you're trying to do that already exists. Even if what you're trying to do is completely original, they will go, well, what give me an example of what this is like. And so having some examples of real world things that were successful that you can point to and go, it's kind of like, this movie meets this movie. You can show people that and go, this is what I'm trying to do, is something that here's something I can point to that maybe you've heard of or recognized, that you go, oh, okay, I get that. That's cool. I want you to do that. And an example of different, you can show different careers of people that you admire. You can go, this person's career is very exciting to me, and look at the cool things that they contribute and do. That can help deal with those people in your life. But one thing I would just say about detractors and trolls, or whoever the spectrum of those types of bad external voices, is to be very careful to not let them creep in and become the negative voice in your head, because then you can't get them out of there. They're in there and they've joined in the chorus of that. So just be careful, try and process that in the moment. Okay, we've got some questions coming in the chat here. From Maureen, I'm older than you, Sara. I'm just starting as a filmmaker. I want someone to hire me to make a film for them. Go, Maureen. That's the thing. It's never too late. It's never too late. My parents taught me this. They changed their entire lives. You can read about it in my book. I'm like plugging my book. Buy my book, you young and older people who may not have the money to do so. Okay. Check it out from the library. My parents completely changed their lives when they were older than I am now, and complete career changes, and they became who they were in their late 40s, and they achieved great things. And so I say it's never too late. What are some of the ways that you learn to be patient? Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Being patient is a huge part of this, because you want to make it right away. You don't want to take the time that everyone tells you it's going to take. You think to yourself, well, maybe I'm special. Maybe I can skip the line a little bit. And maybe you can, but it's still, especially in something like comedy, and I know that I'm being centric on comedy stuff, but I do think it applies to most creative fields, which is, yeah, sure, you might be able to get some career accolades or goals met earlier on, but becoming a true artist does take time, no matter who you are. And just know that it's like a fine wine, and it will be, when I look back on the stuff that I put out in the world when I was starting out, I smile and I go, that was good for the moment, but it was nothing compared to the work I'm doing now. And the good work you'll be doing the longer you do, it's so exciting. It gives me chills thinking about like the work I've done, the foundation I've built, the skills I've learned. It really is really rewarding to be patient, knowing that you're going to be better and better year after year the more you work. And timing, when the timing is right, it will happen for you, hopefully. Okay. What was the time you felt the most down, and how did you cope? Oh, wow. Other than getting rejected from the improv group, there's been so many, like when my TV show got canceled, I actually wasn't that upset. I was actually really stressed and tired, and I like kind of needed a break. And I thought, well, now I'm on this I'm on this higher level in my career. I can do anything now. I got a TV show. I hosted a TV show. I sold it. I conceptualized it, and I did it. And I did the whole thing. All my dreams came true. Now I'm going to just keep doing stuff like that. Well, that's not what happened. And the year after, I ended up, having a ton of rejection, and I'm still kind of on this bumpy road since then. And if you know anything about me, my show was with this comedian, Nikki Glazer. And if you've heard of her, she is blown up. I mean, she's like way more famous than me, has a million more shows she's sold. And that has been, I've had some really low moments in the compare and despair, because she's also my friend. and where I go, what was the difference between me and her, that she's up here and I'm over here? And that really fucked me up. Um, but what I've worked on is working on just a very simple truth, which is my value and my self-worth is not my career. And it has nothing to do with her or anyone else. And really working on that self-love, as corny as that sounds, is how I coped with it. And just making things, doing what truly makes me happy, which is creating, whether the audience is 5 people or 5,000. um, it in the end, it makes me feel good. And so as long as I keep doing that, I can get through those hard times. All right, another question. When do you know you're done with a screenplay, novel, or any creative project and it's ready to be put out in the world? That's a great question. Never. Even after it's out in the world, you'll go, oh no, I should go back and change that. That's not done yet. Like even my book, which I did probably 20 drafts of, and there's copy editors and so many people reading it, proofreading it, friends read it, told me, and still when I'll read, I do an event or whatever, and I read a little passage of the book, I'll think to myself, I mean, I'll be laying in bed at night and think of a sentence from my book where I'll go, God, I should have changed that, idiot, like. And so it will never feel perfect or done. But I think taking those steps, like I talked about earlier, sharing it with a smaller group first, getting feedback, and really getting it to where you feel it's as good as it's going to be, and I just need to let it go. And then a lot of stand-up comedians talk about this, is like that material that you do on a special or on an album, you'll keep performing it afterwards in live settings. But once it's on a special or an album, that's kind of when you're like, okay, it's done, but it's never done, because then when you do perform it again, it keeps changing and getting better. But there's a moment where you just need to set it free. And it is hard to know what that is when you're starting out. But again, I think sharing it with a smaller group first, getting feedback, multiple rounds of feedback can be really helpful. Where people are going, now it's clicking, where people are going to go, yeah, you get that feeling of like, it's ready. There's a feeling, and that will take time and practice to learn that feeling. You talked a bit about your day job in New York. How do you manage the need for a day gig with the hustle to follow your dream? And for that matter, how do you get the courage to move to New York or LA without a real plan? And is that necessary or helpful to move anymore? These are really, really good questions that persist even 20 years later. I definitely, whenever I talk about career stuff with people, I have to be mindful that everyone's circumstances are different. And unfortunately, some of this in our business, having more money or having certain levels of privilege are advantages. And those are real things that, I'm working to change, but it sucks. I definitely had certain levels of privilege. I was college educated, white, cisgendered, able-bodied, all those things going into comedy. But comedy was still and is still a male-dominated business, and it favored people who had a lot of money sitting around where they didn't have to have a day job and they could hang out in the bar until 4 a.m. and buddy up with so and so and like really work that system. And I had some barriers, not that many, so I only have a little bit of experience with it, but having a day job was really stressful and I hated it. But it gave me stability that I really needed, and it afforded me to live in New York, which was obviously, as we all know, an expensive place to live. LA is expensive too. So I say you should go with a plan. I knew people who had to give up on their dreams because they did not have a plan. And as mentioned in this question, unfortunately, not unfortunately, fortunately, we live in a time where with the internet and now with the pandemic, things have really proven to people that you don't necessarily need to physically always be in a certain place to network and get your work out there. But I think having a plan, if you need, I lived in New Orleans for a year before I moved to New York. I I took some time to get into the work. It's a long story, but I got a job, and I wasn't pursuing anything really creative down there. I was just figuring out what it is I wanted to do for real. Um, I went to New York with a job and a plan. And I didn't know how I was going to do comedy, but I knew how I was going to at least survive the first year. I think that really is important. You need a plan. And if you need to take time in your hometown first to get that plan going, it's okay. You're not going to lose ground. There will always be people who just stepped right out of Harvard into the late night writers room. There are those stories, and it sucks hearing about those, and you're just like, I didn't have that access, fuck. But that doesn't mean you're not going to make it. And again, like I said, having a life that you live can make you a better artist in the end. Okay. Any tips to work towards comparing yourself to others less? That's a really tough one. I think social media is a huge part of it for me, and I will go on social media diets where I use apps. They're kind of not perfect because Facebook and they really make it so that it's hard to go on social media diets. Like, they want you on these apps all the time, so like it's tough to disengage without deleting it completely from your life. But I will go on diets from social media. I'll mute people, best friends of mine. I'll mute them for a while because their life is too great right now for me to handle. Like, if I'm in a fragile place, I'll be like, I don't want to see how great it is for you. And then, because what they're showing, I mean, one of my friends who was like having a really great year, I texted him. I was like, oh my God, you're blowing up. It's so great. But inside I was like, I want what he has. I was getting like jealous. And he texted me back and he was like, I've never been more miserable. And I was like, wow, like, I didn't know, and what he was projecting out into the world was not what he was experiencing personally. So just remember that helps with the compare and despair, is that what someone is presenting to the world does not necessarily mean that they're even happy or like what they're doing. So just that is helpful, is that everybody is in the same boat. And I just worked on a show where two extremely famous comedians hung out in a sushi restaurant, and their conversation was shocking to me. They were clearly jealous of each other, and like being like, well, you're in movies with this person, and I'm just selling out, arenas. I'm like, wait, what? Like, they were doing compare and despair to each other's faces, and they're like multi-millionaires. And I was like, what? It never ends. So that actually helped me. I was like, oh, this isn't, that's something you can actually work on yourself. That is not, any amount of fame or money or success is not going to solve that for you, is my point. Okay. And I know we're now at, well, it's 8:30 my time, but I know we're at the hour mark. So if any of you have to go, I'm going to stick around and answer these questions, and then just keep talking to anyone who wants to chat. So if you have to go, and I just will say thank you so much for coming. I've had this has been helpful to me because I'm in a little moment of self-doubt right now with my podcast. And so these were all good tips for myself. So thank you guys for sharing this time with me. And maybe really quick before I answer the other questions, if anyone is brave enough and wants to say their goal out loud, do it now. What did you write down? Anyone?
Oh, I want to be a comedy writer.
Yeah. I love that. We will discuss more if you want to. Anyone else? Be brave. Say it.
I wrote down I want to be a talk show host, and an Emmy would be cool.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. Yes. Okay. Sarah, that was Sarah, right? Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Anyone else?
Format, Sarah. I want to be in a movie, and a SAG award would be cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
I also want to be a comedy writer.
Yeah, I love this. So exciting.
I want to write a pop star's tell-all memoir. Or
Wait, Explain what that means.
Like if a member of One Direction came back in like 20 years, someone's like, I want to tell everyone everything, I'd be like, okay, I don't know much about One Direction, but I would love to ghostwrite it for you.
Yes. Ghost. I have a friend who just ghost wrote a really cool, I won't say who it is because I don't think it's allowed to be known that it was ghost written, but like probably someone you all are a fan of. And she's like, I just wrote this woman's memoir. I was like, yes. It's a really cool goal. I love that. All right. Anyone else? There's some we've got somebody saying, I want to produce award-winning documentaries. I want to write travel articles for a major magazine. Wonderful. All right. One last chance. Creative direction. Love it. Okay. All right, I'll go back to questions. And if anyone has to drop off, thank you again for coming. Follow me on social media. My DMs are open on Instagram and Twitter. Please don't harass me, but I do really love William and Mary peeps. And so I can't believe I just said peeps. That's like, wow. I thought I was better than this. But I do love people from William and Mary, so keep in touch. All right, some of these questions. When do you know, we got that. If you're creating your ideas and putting them out there on giant sites like YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, how do you keep yourself focused on your own goals and ideas in a very views-driven environment where in a lot of cases, success is measured by popularity? Wow. That is, please do your thesis on that question because it is crazy. That is a question I talk about all the time. I want to delete my Twitter and all of it, Instagram. Instagram's not so much bad for me, but I would love to delete all of my social media. But I always say I need it for my career. And it's how we get our work out there as artists. And I can directly correlate some of my money that I make based on stuff that happens on social media. Jobs I've gotten have based on stuff that's happened on social media. So it's necessary as a business move, but views-driven environment, it's so frustrating because there are people who, just because they have a lot of followers does not mean that they're any more valid in their work than what you're doing or what anyone else is doing. Companies and networks and studios are still sort of, I still see them being a little like, ooh, you have a lot of followers. Here's a book deal. Here's this. But it's not as intensely directly related as it was. I think studios, networks, publishers, all those people have kind of started to understand that numbers on social media do not translate necessarily to ratings or sales. It's not a one-to-one correlation. So they're not as in the business, in the pitch rooms I'm in, they're not as obsessed with it. They do look, if you go in with a pitch or you going in for a job and you have a fuck ton of followers, their eyebrows might arch and go, oh, but it's more complicated than that. They're not just, so I think focusing too much on it in your mind is the death of creativity. So try to keep numbers out of what you're doing. Although I myself have done things where I'm like, I know, like I won't do anything I do simply for, I think that I had an idea and I came up with an idea just so it would go viral. That never works. It's when I have a really good idea that I go, oh, I think this is gonna hit. I think people are gonna like this. And those things are when it all kind of comes together. Like Nikki and I, part of our pitch for our TV show included a video that we had made about Justin Timberlake. And it was like just an idea that when I came up with it, I was like, this is going to go viral. I can tell. And I had been working in like online comedy for a while at this point. So I just had my finger on the pulse a little bit. So I just had a feeling. And I told her, I was like, we have this pitch coming up. Why don't we delay putting out the video to come out a few days before the pitch? Because I think it's going to go viral. And if it does, it'll be all the talk of the town when we go in and pitch and it'll make it easier. And it totally happened. It was one of the few times that I was like 100% right. It went viral. Justin Timberlake himself tweeted it. Like, and when we went into pitch, I was like, see, this is the kind of stuff we do on the show. Justin Timberlake, he tweeted it, you know, and it really helped us sell the show. So that was based on a funny idea that came out of me and Nikki having a conversation about Justin Timberlake. So it wasn't something that we came up, you know, where we go, we got to come up with something viral. Every time I think about, try to do that, it doesn't work. So follow the ideas that you like, that you think are good, and try to get those out in the world. Some of them will fail, but some of them, sometimes the dumbest stuff I put out there that I just thought was funny is what ends up being loved by more people. You know, some of the most intense engagement I've gotten on social media lately has been that I've become obsessed with doll houses, and I renovated a dollhouse. I got more attention for that than I did for, like, you know, my life's work, you know? So like, I think playing that game can just be, it can be a waste of time. So I think just focus on what you want to put out in the world. Yes, a little bit of business savvy is going to help. You do need to think about that. How do you build an audience? How do you build followers? I don't have all the answers to that, but those things are skills that you'll probably, unfortunately, need, depending on what you're trying to do. You'll need to work on that. That is going to have to be part of it. And if you're at William & Mary, you're probably a pretty smart, well-rounded person. So you're coming into the game with some skills that, you know, will put you in a good position. Okay. Tips for making it in late night comedy. Well, we don't have time, but I do have on my, I'll give you a little short answer. But I also have 2 articles on my website, saraschaefer.com, about how to submit to a late night show, about tips for doing that and tips on how to even do it. It's a much more in-depth thing. So I definitely recommend going and checking that out. But making it in late night comedy, there's a lot of different ways to do it. Some people do stand-up and live performance, and they work, or sketch or whatever, you know, they go to New York or Chicago or whatever, and they work their way into that world in that way, improv, sketch, stand-up. That is a great way to start, because you're going to be writing for yourself that whole time, and you're going to be performing if you want to be on camera. Some people try the route of, I'm going to go be a PA on a late night show. I'm going to get an entry-level job there, internship, whatever the first level you can. And I've known people that have become very successful doing it that way. That's really tough and competitive. I was not able to do that. And I couldn't afford to be an intern, an unpaid intern. But I found my way in. I started by, and this was very new at the time, it was unheard of, but my way in was by being more involved in the digital space in conjunction to TV shows. And that was new at the time, and it wasn't considered cool or real. It was like, you're a faker and you're pretending to be involved in TV, but you're not. But it ended up being legit, and it's how I won my Emmys. And now it's completely all one thing, and it's normal. But the reason I bring that up is, whatever those new spaces are that maybe your peers are like, that's stupid, that's not real, why would you get involved in that? You know, like, that's just some dumb, insecure shit that they're doing. Don't be afraid to find new paths for yourself that isn't the way that everyone else did it. One of the big things I've learned in comedy is people who go, this is how you do it. You got to do this, then this, then this, and then you're in. And that's the only way to do it. Anyone who tells you that is a grifter, is a scam, or potentially a cult leader. So be careful. You know, like, there's not one way. There's no one. When I moved to New York, it was like, if you don't take classes at UCB, you're done. I took one, and then there was a cheaper theater opened up and had cheaper classes. So I went there and I was fine. There's not one path. And anyone who tells you there is scared that you'll beat them by taking a different path or trying to steal your money. So be careful. Okay, thank you so much for giving us your time, exposing yourself to emotional questions. Yes, this is what I love to do in the morning. Would we you get let me see. Can you have my email? I would say use social media. I'm learning boundaries with my therapist. You can contact me on social media and just say I was in your workshop, and I do read those and answer them. But it's easier to like just for me to separate that a little. I don't need to tell you all that. Thanks so much for speaking with us today. You're welcome. It seems like you dabble in a lot of areas of comedy. What's your favorite? And is it difficult to jump between different types of projects? I do dabble a lot, and sometimes I actually beat myself up. The little negative voice comes in and goes, "You're a master of all trades, or you're jack of all trades, master of none. Maybe if you just could focus on one thing, you know." And then I just tell that voice to go away because I've achieved all my dreams that I had when I was your age, or when I was starting out. I don't want to be focused too much on age. I realize there's different ages in here, but my dream was to, when I started formulating the real, like writing it down like we did at the beginning, it was to host a talk show, to write for TV, to make, essentially it was just to make a living doing what I love. And I am doing that. So I always remember that when I'm feeling down, as I go, I actually did it. I may be frustrated with what's happening specifically with me right now, but I did it. And in that person, I look at that picture of me in the goofy shirt on my head or the terrible haircut, and I look at her and I go, and I get choked up thinking about it. Like, I did it. Your dreams came true. That's so crazy. But I do like to juggle. Sorry, I went off on a tangent. I do like to juggle things, and I do find when I get hired on a TV show to write, it's really hard for me to work on other stuff because those jobs tend to be very intense, and when I'm not working, I'm just tired. And so but when I'm not on a job, I do dabble. I'll like work a little bit on a different thing each day, and that helps. But my favorite, it really depends on the day, but right now I'm really missing stand up because I haven't been able to do it in so long. And I don't even know what the fuck I'm going to say when I go back on stage, and I've even thought about never going back, but just because it's like, well, should I even try? And it's like, no, I'm going to go back. I just don't know what I'm going to do. All right. Anything else? Aw. Okay, this person says, in this hour, you made my stomach hurt and my eyes tear up. And I'm like, wait, what? And they're like, no, thank you. That's a good thing. All right, good. Thanks, Maureen. If you have time to take a look, this is someone just asking me something directly. I don't need to read it out loud. Sure, send me messages if you guys want me to look at stuff. I normally would never say yes to that, but since we're William and Mary and we're doing a little workshop, if I have time, I'll take a look at things that you send me, but probably only once, and don't expect much. Just I'll do what I can. But yeah, if anyone wants to talk, ask anything else, please feel free. Otherwise, I'll give you like a 2-minute just awkward silence here. Maybe 1 minute. 2 minutes is too long. Oh, best piece of advice I've ever gotten. Okay. And then, so Emma, I think you're going to ask something. Best piece of advice I've ever gotten was a little bit about that pie thing that I was talking about. Early on in New York days, just a friend of mine said that thing, and a better, more eloquent version of what I said. He was just like, stop looking at it as a pie with limited amounts of pieces. Think about it as an unlimited pie with unlimited pieces, or that you can make your own pie on the side. And no one had ever really presented it to me that way, and it helped me a lot with the compare and despair, which is something I've struggled with a lot my whole life. And it really helped me and pushed me to go and try my own things, which ended up being the reason I made my dreams come true, is because I didn't worry so much about making it like in a particular scene, or like I mentioned UCB a lot. If you don't know what UCB is, it's Upright Citizens Brigade. It's in New York. It's like Amy Poehler came from there. And when I moved there, it was just like, if you go to UCB, you'll be like Amy Poehler. That was like the promise, and it kind of like Second City in Chicago, like those institutional places. And I really didn't feel like I fit in there or could afford it. And I was so worried that if I didn't go that route, I would never make it. And then someone gave me that piece of advice, and it made me realize that it was about my journey and creating my voice, my work, my skill, building my skill. It doesn't matter if you're doing it in a place like that. In fact, sometimes places like that can be limiting, because you just become obsessed with being on a team at Second, getting on the main stage, and then that's your only goal. Anyway, they're nice people. Grandmas usually make the best pies. That's right. My nickname in middle school was Grandma, and it's what I am and who I am at my core. So thank you for recognizing that. All right, and what got you into Dollhouse as well? As mentioned, I am a grandma in my heart, but I got into dollhouses because I had one when I was young. I was fortunate to have a dollhouse when I was little, and I kept it. And I moved this fall to a new place, and I had the room finally to renovate my childhood dollhouse, and I did. And then I gave it away to a kid in need, and I documented the whole process, and it was like truly one of the most meditative, creatively fulfilling things I've ever done in my life. And I'm literally shopping for a new dollhouse right now to do it again. And I'm actually pitching a show involving dollhouses. So I think I found my real calling. I love miniature things. Oh, I had a miniature lamp on my desk, but now I don't know where it is. I'll show you one miniature. I have them all over the place. Here's a little chair, guys. Okay, anyway, brings me a lot of joy. All right, Emma, did you have a question?
Oh no, I was just pointing out that there was one in the chat, but you said
Okay,
it,
thank
so.
you. All right, well, I'm gonna get on with my day, but again, last chance, willing to chat. Totally love you guys. You all are so wonderful for coming to listen to me and boost my ego for a little bit. I hope that you take the thing you wrote down and you keep it somewhere. You can frame it, put it up, or hide it away. Tell it to one person today if you can. And I encourage you all to just keep that as your central question as you go forward. And don't be afraid to try the thing that scares you the most, because that is where the good stuff is, I promise. And please keep in touch. I'll be there for you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah. This has been fantastic. And thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you all so much.